Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. And the place I do want to start is a place that I could have never imagined wanting to start even 3 or 4 weeks ago. Purdue at Michigan in Ann Arbor, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, night game. And we know why we're talking about this game. It's not because it was a rematch of last year's Big Ten championship game, Purdue stinks. It's because this was the first time that really Michigan has taken the field since all this Connor Stalions stuff broke. I know technically it broke right before the Michigan State game, but nobody really knew all that much about what was going on at that time. Then Michigan goes into the bye, and that was when it got crazy. It was like every single day there was a new story coming out about this team and about this program, about what Connor Stalions did. And so I did think it was important for them to get back on the field just to play football and quiet some of the noise. The big question was, how were they going to look? And was it actually going to quiet the noise, or was it just going to heighten the noise even more? Said it on Friday's show. I said, listen, if this is a 20-13 game going into the fourth quarter and Michigan can't move the ball, that's probably not a great sign for the Michigan fans who believe that Connor Stalions' impact on this program wasn't as big as many in the media have made it out to be. Well, Michigan on Saturday, they beat Purdue 41-13, a game that wasn't nearly as close as the final score would indicate. And I do think if you're a Michigan fan that has argued for the last 2 weeks that none of this is that big of a deal, yes, we broke the rules, but it isn't this egregious thing that everybody in the media is making it out to be. And I do include myself on some of that because I have been guilty of being critical of Michigan. I do think Saturday was a good day for Michigan fans. Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Let me start by saying this. I know I just said it. I did think it was very important for Michigan just to get back on the field. This story broke, as I said, right before their most recent game. And maybe that was on purpose. You know, there's some rumors coming out of Ann Arbor about why the story broke when it did and how it may have gotten out. But like I said, it was like every single day there was a new story. And so for Michigan, you had to get back on the field. You had to quiet some of the noise. We know that Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, was on campus on Friday. And I thought they largely did. I thought they largely looked mostly like they did before the bye. Now, I know people would sit there and say, well, Torres, they only won by 28. They were a 32-point favorite. They were destroying everybody before the bye, beat Indiana by 52, beat Minnesota or 45, beat Minnesota by 45, beat Michigan State by 49. They only beat Purdue by 32 or 28. Even Indiana or even Ohio State, you complain about Ohio State's offense all the time, Torres. Ohio State beat them by 30 plus. So what does that say about Michigan? Well, if you watch the game, Michigan was in complete control from start to finish. There was never a doubt. Michigan jumped out to a 30-0 lead. They were up 14-0, scored 2 touchdowns on their first 2 possessions. And even the 13 points, which is the most that Michigan has given up all year. If you watch the game, it was fluky. One of Purdue's field goals came right before the half after Michigan went for it on their own 34-yard line. I was watching the game. Even Todd Blackledge was like, wow, why did Michigan do that? Just punt the ball, make them go the length of the field. They can't do it. And then Purdue scored a touchdown late in the game when the game was basically over. So you really didn't give up basically anything. The offense was fine. It wasn't elite, but J.J. McCarthy threw the ball really well. You know, the run game, for what it's worth, has not been as good this year as it had been in previous years. So if you want to use the run game as some sort of indictment, it's like, well, the run game hasn't been good all year. So like I said, I think this is largely a positive for Michigan going into the final home stretch of the season. And I will say, like, first of all, let me even say this. I say this as somebody who's been critical of Michigan. I do think at this point, though, the story has largely pretty much gotten out of hand. You know, one, it's clear that somebody is leaking story after story after story after story to kind of keep this in the news. I mean, that feels pretty obvious to me. It's not to say that Michigan didn't break the rules, but at the same time, and I tweeted this on whatever, Friday or Saturday, I said, like, the idea of 13 ADs, 13 coaches getting on a call without Michigan and basically bashing them and pushing for the Big Ten to suspend them or do whatever. Like, I don't buy it. And I said it. It's like, you know, even criminals get due process. Even criminals have a lawyer that's allowed to represent themselves. So for Ohio State and Wisconsin and Michigan State to get on an AD and just bash, when we really still don't know a lot of stuff. Now, we know Connor Stalions bought tickets. We know Connor Stalions, whatever. And we even know that some of those tickets were used this year. But one thing we do know, we know they didn't steal Purdue signs, because Purdue, all week long, Ryan Walters was complaining about, well, we have to change our signs and this is a new language and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, you just stink. You took over the best team in the Big Ten West and you stink. Okay. I don't want to hear it from you. But what I would also say is, while I do think that rules were broken, like I do think this is going to quiet down one way or the other. And I kind of stand by what I said on Friday's show. I think there's a lot of pressure internally on Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, to do something about Michigan. But as I said, I think it's going to quiet down one way or the other, because Michigan, I would argue, probably has the 3 toughest games left on its schedule still ahead. At Penn State this weekend, at Maryland, Ohio State to end the regular season. Now, you could argue, is Maryland really the 3rd toughest game on their schedule? Maybe it was Rutgers, maybe it was Nebraska, maybe it was whatever. Whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that they have 3 really tough games ahead. As I said, we know Purdue switch signs. Penn State and Ohio State are certainly going to do the same. And so this is going to end in one of 2 ways. If Michigan goes to Penn State and wins, 28-3 and looks as dominant as they have all year, what leg is Penn State going to have to stand on? By the way, what leg is Minnesota or Michigan State or whoever is being critical have to stand on? Like, I get it. You're frustrated. I get it. But if Michigan runs the table and beats Penn State, beats Maryland, beats Ohio State, it's going to be hard to argue that this whole thing, that the integrity has been compromised of the entire season. Because at the end of the day, 3 toughest games left on the schedule. Half of your Big Ten slate essentially happened after this scandal broke. And beyond that, you won the games on the field. Ohio State, there's going to be no excuse if you lose to Michigan. Like even if they were illegally breaking the rules and in your stadium early in the year, they got caught, you change your signs, whatever. I'm going on and on, but you get the point. Do I believe that Michigan should not be punished at all? I never said that. If we go through the process and we find out that that stuff was done, then yes, you do have to punish Michigan. Now, what I think is important, and this is the part everybody says, well, it's we know they bought tickets and we know they bought flights and we know they did this and we know they did that. I guess my question that we're still trying to figure out, how much did Jim Harbaugh know? How much did the assistant coaches know? Et cetera, et cetera. And as of right now, we still have no proof that anybody outside of Stalions and kind of his inner circle of guys and girls were involved here. And so I'm going on and on. But the point I'm trying to make, I think this gets resolved one way or the other without the Big Ten jumping in. If Michigan runs the table, it's going to be hard for me to argue, maybe some of you will feel differently, that they're the best team in the Big Ten. And if they lose, and if they get beat by Penn State 24-6 next week, and they can't move the football and they're a total disaster, then we'll say, yeah, maybe Connor Stalions had an impact. But as I said, I do believe, in my opinion, I thought that win over Purdue was largely a positive sign. Purdue basically didn't move the football at all. Michigan wasn't perfect, but by the way, the weather wasn't great. Haven't run the football all year. I thought it was a good day for Michigan. Now, if you're a Michigan fan, you know what this reminds me of? Reminds me of the scene in a Major League when they know that the owner doesn't want them to win. And it's either, I can't remember if it's Lou Brown, the manager, or Roger Dorn, but he says, I guess there's only one thing to do, win the whole you-know-what thing. Michigan, go out, destroy Penn State, go out, destroy Maryland, go out, destroy Ohio State, and there's going to be no debate.